All right, hello parents and students. So I know I was going to do a live video on some practice tips for going home after lessons, but I figured doing it this way you guys could watch it on your own time. So today I'm going to share with you 5 helpful practice tips that I use on my own and I would like to share with you students and parents. So these are going to be in order of what to do first when you get ready to practice. So I know a lot of you students have cell phones, iPads, all kinds of tablets and technology, and those are so fun and so useful, but when you get ready to practice your piano, I would like for you guys to turn those off and put them away. I do this with my phone and my laptop. I usually put all of them away so I have no distractions when I'm getting ready to practice, because you want good quality time with your instrument and with your music. Okay, that is tip number 1. Put all of your tech away if possible. Even if the TV is in the same room as your piano, like mine is, turn it off and make sure nobody's watching it and you have good time with your instrument. No distractions. Okay? The second thing is, when you get ready to sit down at the piano, make sure both of your feet are flat on the floor. Now, for some of you who can't reach, that's okay. But what I don't want you to do is try not to stand when you're practicing. Don't sit on your knees, don't cross your legs. You want to make sure that your feet are flat on the floor and your hands are always touching the piano. Both hands are always on the piano at all times. That's a big one. Both hands on the piano at all times. Okay, you want good posture when practicing. You want to sit up straight, hands on the piano, feet on the floor. That is tip number 2. Tip number 3 is, before you start any kind of music, especially for those of you who know your scales, is to do a little bit of warm-ups. So this is why I gave you the scales. 1, so you know your scales, and 2, so it gives you something to do before you start your music. So you could play your C major scale, your G major scale, D major, whatever scales that you know. Play through them a couple of times to get your fingers warmed up and ready to play your music. Okay? That is tip number 3. So let's go over the first 3 tips again, just to clarify what we've gone over. Okay? Tip number 1 is to put away all your technology so you have no distractions and you have good quality time with your instrument. Second tip is have good posture. Feet on the floor, sitting up straight, hands on the piano. Now, tip number 3 is, if you have scales, practice your scales, practice your warm-ups, get your fingers ready to play. For those of you who do not have scales yet, who are new to lessons or are younger, you can play some songs that you've already practiced throughout the couple of weeks. So practice something that you're very familiar with. That is tip number 3. Tip number 4 is, when you're practicing a new piece of music, is you have a few things that you need to look at before you ever begin. So right here I have a new piece of music, and the first things that I suggest you look at when you have a new piece of music is your clefs. Treble clef and bass clef. Treble on top, bass on bottom. Remember that, guys. The second thing is your time signatures. Are you playing in 4/4 or are you playing in 3/4? Now remember, when we have 4/4, we have 4 beats in every measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when you see 3/4, that means you're going to have 3 beats in every measure. 1, 2, 3. This is very crucial because you want to be able to count how many beats that you have in every measure. Alright? The third thing that you want to look at is your dynamics. A lot of us have just started going over dynamics. Now, a few dynamic markings that you're going to see in your music are F, P, MF, or MP. Now, F, we all know, stands for forte, loud. Piano, or P, stands for piano, which means soft. Now, MF stands for mezzo forte, and MP stands for mezzo piano. Now some of us have just started learning these, so it's okay if you need a little bit of review for those. But remember, your clefs, time signatures, and dynamics are 3 things you want to look at right before you start practicing. Now one last thing that you want to look at in your music is your key signature. If you have flats or sharps, that will be in between your clefs and your time signature, so it'll be right in the middle. Most of us are just doing 1 flat or 1 or 2 sharps, so you're not going to be seeing too many sharps and flats, so don't get overwhelmed with that. But those are a few things that you need to look at before starting a piece of music: clefs, time signatures, dynamics, and key signatures. Now the last thing that we want to do when we're practicing new music is to separate our hands. So most of the time when we play treble clef, we're going to use our right hand, and most of the time when we're playing bass clef, we're going to use our left hand. So if you have a piece where you're playing with both hands, what I suggest is to practice 1 hand at a time. So if you're very confident with what the treble clef sounds like, practice it a couple of times, get used to it, get comfortable with it. Now if you're struggling with bass clef a little bit more, spend more time with your bass clef, your left hand. You want to spend more time with the things that you struggle with more than the times in your music that you have easier time with, okay? So the last thing that you want to do is to separate your hands and spend good quality time with the parts of the music that you struggle with more than the easier parts. I know it's fun to play things that we know so well, but it is very crucial to practicing that you hit those spots where you're having a little bit more trouble with, okay? So we're going to review these 5 tips really quickly, and then I will probably do a second video with more tips later on. So tip number 1 is to put your technology away, make sure you have no distractions, and good quality time with your instrument. Tip number 2 is make sure you have good posture. Straight back, feet on the floor, hands on your piano. Tip number 3 is have some warm-ups. Do some scales, do some songs you already know. Get those hands ready to practice new music. Tip number 4, the first things to look at in your new music: your clefs, treble clef and bass clef. Look at your time signatures. Am I in 4/4 or am I in 3/4? Look at my dynamics. Am I playing forte or am I playing piano? And your key signatures. Do I have 1 sharp? Do I have 1 flat? Do I have no sharps and no flats? And then the last thing is to separate your hands and practice your right hand and your left hand separately, and spend more time on the hand that you have the most trouble with. And then put them together when you feel very comfortable with both hands. Now I hope these were helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I will be glad to help. Thank you.